Okay, so we're going to look at transpiration. Transpiration is a practical application of osmosis and water potential. Transpiration is one of the key processes plants have to carry out, which transpiration basically involves what?
Water.
The movement of water. And water is primarily needed for what process? But it is used in translocation, but primarily the main reason we bring water in is photosynthesis. While we'll see later on as we get into the details, water is what provides the electrons, which are what gets excited by the sun's energy and allows the energy transfer for making ATP and NADPH, which is used to produce sugar. All right, if you didn't follow any of that, you will eventually. So this whole process is about getting water into the plant so we can carry out photosynthesis. Now, plants, if you go back in the history of plants, the earliest plants were mosses. What's true about mosses? Physically. They're fuzzy. Probably more importantly, they're very short and low to the ground. Why would you be short and low to the ground? That's where the water is. That's where the water is. And if you look at the evolution of plants, plants stayed fairly short for quite a long time until we developed a type of plant called vascular plants. Vascular plants developed vascular structures called xylem and phloem, which would allow them to transport materials over a distance. And that's when plants started to get tall. Now, what would be the advantage of having vascular tissue that allowed you to get tall? More sunlight. I can outcompete you suckers on the ground for sunlight. I can shade your little moss butt out and take over. Yay? So it became a strong advantage. The xylem part of the system was designed to move the water. And this is all based on creating what's called transpirational pole. Transpirational pole is created by a negative pressure. And we create that negative pressure by creating a gradient between what? Atmosphere and soil. And what about the atmosphere and soil are we going to create a gradient in? The water potential. We're going to create a gradient in the water potential between the soil and the atmosphere. This is going to create a negative pressure, which will create a transpirational pole, which will literally be like sucking on a straw and move the liquid up against gravity. Going anywhere? So in a typical situation, on a typical day, we would expect to see a fairly high water potential in the soil because the soil should have what in it? Water, should have moisture in it. If you're talking in the forest, we probably got leaf litter on the ground. What's the advantage of having leaf litter? Mulch. Why do you put mulch in your yard? Holds the water in, keeps it from drying out. All right? Yeah, it blocks the weeds, all that other stuff too, which is another reason for leaf litter. But it helps moisture in. So if we got a lot of moisture in the soil, water potential should be fairly high. Here it's not too far off of zero. What has a water potential of zero again? Distilled water. So we're a pretty saturated situation. As we move up the tree, as we go up the tree, what happens to our water potential? Gets more negative. So water potential is actually decreasing. Well, up here, we're talking about in the air. On a typical day, the air tends to be dry. There's not a lot of moisture in the air. So if there's not a lot of moisture in the air, water potential is going to become more low or more negative. Okay? In the leaves, why would the water potential drop? Starts to drop up here in the leaves.
Because of where they can.
So one of the things is we're losing water to the atmosphere, so water is rushing out of the leaf through what? Through the stomata, which is creating a vacuum, a void, for more water to move in and fill. There's that negative pressure. Also, what's happening in a typical day in the leaf? What process is happening in the leaf? Photosynthesis. As a result of photosynthesis, we're accumulating what product? Sugar. So if we're accumulating sugar, that's adding basically what? Solute to the environment. And solute tends to do what? Which causes the water potential also to drop. So you've got a couple things going on in the leaf which is causing water potential to drop. We have water constantly being lost to the dry environment, and we have sugar buildup in the phloem, which we're going to see later can affect the movement of water and cause the water potential to also drop. With me at all? Right? And so at negative 0.3 up to negative 7, that's a big shift. And that creates a negative pressure. The laws of nature say water wants to go from high to low. So there's a big force that is encouraging water to go up. That creates that pull, that transpirational pull. And when you open the stomata to this negative 100, you really got a huge transpirational pull. Okay? Assisting that, because pull alone is not enough, especially when you're talking like a tree going up 200-300 feet. Assisting this is what other property? Cohesion and adhesion. Capillary action. Because cohesion and adhesion is allowing the water to basically do what? Stick to itself and then into the walls. It essentially allows the water to climb. So you got the pull there, but the adhesion, cohesion is necessary so that the water doesn't do what? React to gravity and fall back down. You probably couldn't create enough pull, 200 feet, to literally pull the water against gravity. Got me? So it's a combination of the two factors. The ability of water to cling, climb, adhesion, cohesion, helps overcome some of that gravitational pull. And then the transpirational pull, along with that adhesion, cohesion, is enough to overcome gravity and bring the water up in an upward direction. So it really is all about controlling water potential. It's all about controlling water potential. Yes or no? What happens when it rains? Good question. Well, what's going to happen down here at the soil? More water. So it should do what to the water potential? Raise it. But there's also going to be in the atmosphere more water, which is going to cause that to go up. Okay? So this is going to maybe not be negative 100. That might now be negative 50. And this may only be negative 0.2. But the gradient is still going to favor water going up. It's just not going to go up as quickly or as efficiently or as fast. Yay? And we're going to explore some of these other factors. What if you have a lot of humidity? What if you have a very windy day? What if you have a number of things is what we'll take a look at in the lab situation. And there's a number of factors that can affect this. Why in the winter do we lose leaves? Connected to this. Why don't you want leaves at this time of year? What's happening to the air at this time of year? Much drier air. The air is much drier as it gets colder. Less moisture in the air, which means that's going to create even more transpirational pull. And there's not a lot of new water coming in usable form at this time of year, so basically what would happen to the tree? It would dehydrate. It's preparing for the most extreme situation. It's preparing for what you're going to see through the bulk of the winter, at least we used to see through the bulk of the winter, okay? Which is pretty frozen ground. It's Therefore, the ground's frozen, so we prevent water infiltration. And we got very, very dry air. Right? How come conifers can get away with keeping the needles? They're special. What does that mean? They're special. Yeah, greatly reduced surface area. Plus, the needles are coated with wax. Okay, etc., etc. Okay. Okay. Going anywhere? Dang, things in the world sometimes connect and make sense. I don't know where that comes from. All right, I thought I was supposed to just learn something, dump it, and move on. Bobby, any things that came up while you were trying to write your own explanation that we need to clarify or I missed? On this particular one first. All right, so let's, I don't have a lot of time, so let's go to translocation. I'll come back to stomata later. So translocation is the process of moving sugar around. Sugar always moves from source to sink. But what is a source today can tomorrow be a sink, and what was a sink today can tomorrow be a source. Sources and sinks are constantly changing depending around here what time of year it is. So in the summer, what's a source of sugar production? The leaves. What's the sink? The fruit or the flowers, or what was happening in August? What was the sink? I'm about to lose my leaves. Where am I going to put my sugar?
In the roots.
The roots. Holy moly. All right. So just a couple months ago, leaves were sources and roots were sinks. Right now, what's the source? The roots. And the sinks are the cells that make up the woody part of the plant. Okay? And as we get to spring, the roots will continue to be a source, and what becomes the sink? The leaf buds. So it can root out and develop leaves. Once the leaves fan out, they become a source again, and now roots become a sink again, and fruits and all that type of stuff, yada, yada, yada. Now, this is a different system because it's a positive pressure system. A positive pressure system. So let's start up here. Here we are at a leaf, and here's the leaf cell making sucrose, making sugar. All right? Initially, where is going to be the greater concentration of sugar? In the source. So sugar is going to naturally want to leave the leaf from high concentration and move into the phloem. And that's what initially is happening. Sucrose is going to initially go in. Well, over a short period of time, what's going to eventually happen? You're going to build up sucrose in the phloem, and you are going to be in danger of reaching. And why do I say in danger? Because then this movement of sugar is going to cease, which we don't want it to. So what happens is as sugar builds up, that's a lot of solute. That's going to do what to the water potential? Lower it. It's going to drop the water potential lower than the water potential in the neighboring xylem. Well, as soon as I drop the water potential in the phloem lower than the water potential in the xylem, the water is naturally going to want to do what? Cross over. That's then going to dilute the solution and do what to the water potential? Raise it. I'm creating positive high water potential up here. Down here, I'm going to have lower potential as the sugar accumulates in the sink. And so now sugar is going to be forced downward in this case from the source to the sink due to a buildup of water, creating a high water potential and a positive pressure. Going anywhere? And that's going to, so in comes water potential goes up. In comparison, we're removing sugar down here, which is going to cause the water potential to It'll actually increase, but it's not going to increase as fast as what we're doing up here. Right? And that's going to create a positive pressure to push the sugar down. Sugar will then, as it gets down here, it's going to be in high concentration. It gets pulled out quickly into the sink. Eventually, it may take some active transport to pull the last little bit out and put it into the sink. Going anywhere? All right. So sugar is produced. Sugar begins to accumulate. The accumulation of sugar drops the water potential, which draws water over from the xylem, which increases the water potential, creating a positive pressure, which pushes the sugar towards the sink. Yes or no? That could be done in a downward direction, as it is in this example. That can also be done in an upward direction in the springtime. It's going to be the reverse. Sugar is going to be released at the bottom of the plant from the roots, and the positive pressure is going to be used to drive the sugars back up towards the leaves. It can also move in a lateral direction out through the branches. So it can go in multiple directions depending on where the pressure is created. So wherever you're pulling water out from the xylem into the flow, from the xylem into the phloem, you're creating a positive pressure, which then pushes everything else along. Again, it's taking advantage of basically water potential osmosis diffusion. And it becomes another way to get free shipping. So plants, for the most part, are moving water and sugar, in some cases, hundreds of feet daily for no energy. And we thought plants were stupid. You got to have a little pump in your body. You can't do it for nothing. You got to make this pump work. Right? You're only what? 5 foot tall. Trees are several hundred feet tall, and they can do it with no energy expenditure. So who's the silly one? I assume because you're getting up and walking on